.NET Technical Interview Questions and Answers. 1. What is .NET? .NET is a free, open-source development platform developed by Microsoft. It provides a framework for building and running applications on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. It supports multiple programming languages like C#, VB.NET, and F#. 2. Explain the difference between .NET Framework, .NET Core, and .NET 5, or .NET 6. .NET Framework. It is the traditional .NET platform that runs on Windows and includes a wide range of libraries. It's suitable for Windows desktop applications and older web applications. .NET Core. It's a cross-platform version of .NET that can run on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. It's designed for modern web applications, cloud-based services, and console applications. .NET 5 or .NET 6, or later versions. Microsoft unified .NET Core and .NET Framework into a single platform called .NET 5, later renamed .NET 6, .NET 7, and so on. It's also cross-platform and replaces both .NET Framework and .NET Core. 3. What is C#? C#, pronounced as C#, is a modern, object-oriented programming language developed by Microsoft. It is the primary language used for developing applications on the .NET platform. For what are the access modifiers in C#? C# has 5 access modifiers. Public, the member is accessible from any code. Private, the member is accessible only within its class. Protected, the member is accessible within its class and derived classes. Internal, the member is accessible within the same assembly level. Protected internal, the member is accessible within the same assembly or from derived classes. 5. What is the difference between value types and reference types in C#? Value types. Variables of value types directly contain the data, and they are stored on the stack. Examples include primitive types like int, float, and structs. Reference types. Variables of reference types contain a reference to the memory location where the data is stored, the object. They are stored on the heap. Examples include classes, interfaces, arrays, and delegates. 6. What is the purpose of the using statement in C#? The using statement is used to ensure that an object is properly disposed of when it is no longer needed. It applies to types that implement the iDisposable interface, and it automatically calls the dispose method on the object, which helps release unmanaged resources and free up memory. 7. Explain the async/await feature in C#. Async/await is a feature in C# that allows you to write asynchronous code more easily. The async keyword is used to define asynchronous methods, and the await keyword is used to await the completion of an asynchronous operation. It helps avoid blocking the main thread and allows for more responsive and scalable applications. 8. What is the difference between const and readonly in C#? Const. It is a compile time constant and must be initialized with a value at the time of declaration. It is implicitly static and cannot be changed after initialization. Read-only. It is a runtime constant and can be initialized in the constructor or at the time of declaration. It allows for different values to be assigned in different constructors but cannot be modified outside the constructor. 9. How does inheritance work in C#? Inheritance is a fundamental concept in object-oriented programming. In C#, a class can inherit from another class using the colon symbol. The derived class, subclass, inherits the members, fields, properties, methods of the base class, superclass. It allows code reuse and the creation of a hierarchical relationship between classes. 10. What is the Common Language Runtime, CLR? In .NET, the Common Language Runtime, CLR, is the heart of the .NET framework. It is responsible for managing the execution of .NET programs, including memory management, code execution, security, and exception handling. CLR provides a common runtime environment for all .NET languages, allowing them to interoperate seamlessly. 11. What are assemblies in .NET? Assemblies are the building blocks of .NET applications. They are self-contained units that contain compiled code, metadata, and resources needed to execute an application. Assemblies can be in the form of DLLs, dynamic link libraries, or EXEs, executable files. 12. What are the different types of assemblies in .NET? In .NET, there are mainly two types of assemblies: private assemblies. These are used within the application's directory and are accessible only to that application. Shared assemblies. These are deployed to the global assembly cache, (GAC), and can be accessed by multiple applications on the same machine. 13. Explain the difference between early binding and late binding in C#. Early binding. It occurs at compile time, and the method or property to be called is determined beforehand. It provides better performance as the compiler knows the exact method signatures and data types at compile time. Late binding. It occurs at runtime, and the method or property to be called is determined during the execution. Late binding allows more flexibility as you can use types that are unknown at compile time, but it comes with a performance overhead. 14. What is the purpose of the Global Assembly Cache, (GAC)? The Global Assembly Cache, (GAC), is a central repository for shared assemblies in .NET. It allows multiple applications to access and use the same version of an assembly, promoting code reusability and version management. 15. Explain the difference between interface and abstract class in C#. Interface. It is a contract that defines a set of method signatures and properties. It does not contain any implementation and is used to achieve multiple inheritances and provide a common contract for classes to adhere to. Abstract class. It is a class that cannot be instantiated directly and may contain a mix of method declarations, abstract members, and method implementations. It serves as a base class for other classes to inherit from. 16. What is the purpose of the using directive in C#? The using directive in C# is used to include namespaces at the beginning of the code file. It allows you to use types from those namespaces directly without writing the fully qualified name each time. 17. Explain the concept of boxing and unboxing in C#. Boxing. It is the process of converting a value type, such as int or float, to an object type, such as object. This is necessary when value types need to be treated as objects, for example, when adding them to a collection that requires objects. Unboxing. It is the process of converting an object type back to its original value type. It is necessary when retrieving a value from an object collection, for example, getting a value from an array list. 18. What is a delegate in C#? A delegate in C# is a reference type that represents a method signature. It allows methods to be assigned to variables and passed as arguments to other methods. Delegates are commonly used to implement events and callback mechanisms. 19. Explain the purpose of the Configuration Manager class in .NET. The Configuration Manager class is part of the system configuration namespace and is used to read configuration settings from the application's configuration file, app.config or web.config. It allows easy access to various settings and connection strings used by the application. 20. What is the difference between IEnumerable and iQueryable in LANQ? IEnumerable. It is the base interface for all collections in LANQ. It represents a forward-only, read-only collection of data. When using IEnumerable, the data is fetched from the database and processed in memory, making it suitable for querying data from in-memory collections like arrays and lists. iQueryable. It inherits from IEnumerable but extends its functionality to support querying data from various data sources, including databases. When using iQueryable, the query is not executed immediately. Instead, it is translated into a query that can be executed against the underlying data source, example SQL for a database. This allows for more efficient database queries. 21. What are the different authentication modes supported in ASP.NET? ASP.NET supports various authentication modes for securing web applications. Windows Authentication uses the user's Windows credentials to authenticate. Forms Authentication uses a custom login page and stores authentication information in a cookie or the session. Passport Authentication, deprecated, used for authenticating users through Microsoft Passport Service. OAuth Authentication allows users to log in using their existing Google, Facebook, or other OAuth provider accounts. OpenID Connect, an extension of OAuth 2.0 that allows for authentication based on the identity provider, IDP, and provides identity information. 22. What is the difference between viewState and session state in ASP.NET? ViewState. it is used to store the state of individual controls and is maintained on a per-page basis. ViewState is encoded and sent to the client as a hidden field in the page. It is useful for preserving control state during post-backs session state. It is used to store user-specific data that is accessible across multiple pages within a user session. Session data is stored on the server either in process, in a state server, or in a SQL Server database. 23. What is Entity Framework, EF, and how does it relate to LANQ? Entity Framework, EF, is an object relational mapping, ORM, framework provided by Microsoft. It enables developers to work with relational data as domain-specific objects, eliminating the need for writing raw SQL queries. LANQ, Language Integrated Query, is a language feature in C# that provides a consistent query syntax for querying data from different data sources, including databases. In EF, LANQ is commonly used to perform database queries and updates. 24. Explain the concept of dependency injection (DI) and how it is achieved in .NET Core. Dependency injection is a design pattern that promotes loose coupling between classes by allowing them to request their dependencies from an external source rather than creating those dependencies themselves. In .NET Core, DI is achieved through built-in services provided by the framework. The configure services method in the startup class is used to register dependencies, and the built-in DI container handles the injection of those dependencies into the classes that need them. 25. What are the different types of testing in .NET? In .NET, various types of testing are commonly used: unit testing, testing individual units or components of code in isolation; integration testing, testing interactions between multiple units or modules; functional testing, testing the application's functionality against the specified requirements; performance testing, testing the application's performance under various conditions; acceptance testing, testing the application's behavior. From the end user's perspective, automated testing, using automated tools to perform testing tasks. 26. Explain the purpose of the using statement in the context of file I/O in C#. In the context of file I/O, the using statement in C# is used to ensure proper resource disposal. When working with file streams or other objects that implement the iDisposable interface, the using statement automatically calls the dispose method when the code block is exited, releasing any unmanaged resources associated with the object and ensuring proper cleanup. 27. What is the globalization and localization feature in .NET? Globalization is the process of designing an application to be culture-aware and support multiple languages, regions, and date-time formats. Localization, on the other hand, is the process of adapting the application to a specific culture by providing localized resources, such as translated strings, for different languages and regions. In .NET, the globalization and localization feature allows developers to create applications that can be easily customized for different cultures. 28. Explain the concept of asynchronous programming in .NET. Asynchronous programming in .NET allows applications to perform non-blocking operations and remain responsive while waiting for the completion of time-consuming tasks. It is achieved using the async/await keywords, which allow developers to write asynchronous code that doesn't block the main thread. Asynchronous programming is beneficial for I/O bound and CPU bound tasks, improving the overall scalability and responsiveness of applications. 29. What is NuGet, and how is it used in .NET development? NuGet is a package manager for .NET that simplifies the process of adding third-party libraries and dependencies to .NET projects. It allows developers to search for and install packages from the official NuGet repository. NuGet manages package references and automatically downloads and includes the required libraries in the project, streamlining the development process and reducing the need for manual package management. 30. Explain the concept of ASP.NET Core middleware. Middleware in ASP.NET Core is software components that form a request processing pipeline. Each middleware can handle an HTTP request and response and perform specific tasks, such as authentication, logging, routing, and more. The request flows through the middleware pipeline, and each middleware can modify or process the request and pass it to the next middleware in the chain. 31. What are the different types of caching available in ASP.NET? In ASP.NET, there are several types of caching available. Output caching caches the output of an entire page or user control, serving the cached content for subsequent requests. Fragment caching caches specific parts, fragments, of a page or user control. Data caching caches frequently accessed data to improve performance and reduce database calls. Distributed caching caches data across multiple servers to share cached data in a web farm or cloud environment. 32. Explain the concept of ASP.NET Core Razor Pages. Razor Pages is a page-based programming model in ASP.NET Core that makes it easier to build web applications with simple page-based structures. Each Razor page represents an individual page with its own logic, UI, and code behind. Razor pages allow developers to create web applications with a focus on simplicity and separation of concerns. 33. What is the purpose of the Entity Framework Core? In .NET Core, Entity Framework Core, EF Core, is an object relational mapping (ORM) framework for .NET Core. It allows developers to work with databases using strongly typed domain entities rather than writing raw SQL queries. EF Core abstracts the database access and provides a set of APIs for querying and manipulating data, making database interactions more intuitive and less error-prone. 34. Explain the differences between the temp data, viewbag, and view data in ASP.NET MVC. Temp data is used to pass data between two consecutive requests. It is a short-lived dictionary that stores data in the session for a single redirect. It is useful when we need to persist data temporarily across actions. Viewbag is a dynamic property provided by ASP.NET MVC to pass data from a controller to a view. It is a lightweight way to pass data, but it has no compile time safety. View data is similar to viewbag, but it uses a dictionary-like syntax to pass data between the controller and view. It is less preferred compared to viewbag and temp data because it requires explicit casting. 35. Explain the concept of code-first migration in Entity Framework. Code-first migration is a technique in Entity Framework that allows developers to define the database schema using C# or VB.NET code, classes and properties. Instead of designing the database schema first and generating the code from it, the code-first approach enables developers to create classes and their relationships and have EF create the corresponding database schema automatically. Migrations can then be used to evolve the database schema as the application's data model changes. 36. What is the difference between Singleton and Transient services in .NET Core Dependency Injection? A Singleton service is created only once and is shared throughout the application's lifetime. Any subsequent requests for the service will return the same instance. It's suitable for services that are stateless and can be shared across all users. A transient service is created every time it's requested. It provides a new instance for each request. Transient services are suitable for lightweight, stateless services that need to be scoped to a specific operation or user. 37. Explain the concept of the AspNet Core Hosting Model setting in ASP.NET Core Application Settings. The AspNet Core Hosting Model setting in ASP.NET Core Application Settings, example.xproj file, controls how the application is hosted in IIS. It has two values, in process and out of process. In process, the application runs within the IIS worker process, w3wp.exe or iceexpress.exe. This setting offers better performance as it eliminates the need for inter-process communication, IPC, between IIS and the .NET Core process. Out of process, the application runs as a separate process outside of the IIS worker process. This setting provides better isolation and allows for graceful application shutdowns but comes with a slight performance overhead due to IPC between IIS and the .NET Core process. 38. What is the role of the iHost and iHost Builder in .NET Core Application Startup? In .NET Core, the iHost and iHost Builder interfaces play a crucial role in application startup and lifetime management. iHost Builder is responsible for configuring services, logging, and other application components, while iHost represents the application hosting environment. The iHost Builder is used to build an iHost instance, which is responsible for starting and stopping the application and managing its lifetime. 39. Explain the concept of .NET Core self-contained deployments. A self-contained deployment in .NET Core is a deployment option that includes all the required runtime and framework libraries with the application. It allows the application to run on a machine that does not have the .NET Core runtime installed. Self-contained deployments are platform-specific and result in larger application package sizes, but they provide the benefit of being able to run the application on machines without the need for a separate runtime installation. 39. Explain the concept of .NET Core self-contained deployments. A self-contained deployment in .NET Core is a deployment option that includes all the required runtime and framework libraries with the application. It allows the application to run on a machine that does not have the .NET Core runtime installed. Self-contained deployments are platform-specific and result in larger application package sizes, but they provide the benefit of being able to run the application on machines without the need for a separate runtime installation. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell notification for upcoming updates.